We have some work to do, ladies and gentlemen. Today we continue the series of which region would be the last man standing in a free-for-all fight to the death of all regions. Continuing with Johto, let's begin. But first, a quick overview of the rules from last episode. No alliances and no Geneva Convention. Every region is fighting off against each other, even all the ones based in Japan, or they just win with all their dragons. No mythicals and no legendaries, otherwise Japan just wins. No national dexes and no DLCs, otherwise the UK just wins. If you want a full overview of the rules, then I suggest that you go and watch the previous video where I explain them all in very minute detail, also where I went over the Kanto region, as this is a continuation of the series. I would suggest watching that one first, personally. However, let's continue where we left off with the Johto region. This region is based off the Kansai region of Japan, or in other words, the second most populous region of Japan, taking after Kanto. Together, it forms a joint landmass with the Chubu region, which... Chubu? The Chubu region, and this can all be found west of the Kanto region. It forms a massive landmass with Kanto and Chubu. So it's kind of the three, it's kind of like a, what's that cake called? Or just like ice cream. You know, that three flavored ice cream, it's that. First, we'll do some overall observations of the region. Immediately when I started doing the research for this bit, I saw some striking differences to the aforementioned Kanto region. If you think back to Generation 2, and I'm sure we can all agree on this, you'll remember the regional decks sucking ass. So I did have my preconceptions. I went into this region thinking, oh, it's gonna suck ass. But how wrong I was. This did surprise me, as you can imagine, since the amount of Pokemon they introduced that was new from Kanto was much smaller compared to the actual Kanto decks. As well as this, the Pokemon inside the region don't have too many numbers that I can base calculations off, so I had to take a much more hands-on approach and kind of ground it to reality with real-life situations to make this work. And in doing so, I realized this region is a massive underdog. So to tell this story a little bit better, we're going to start off slightly differently than we did the last video. I hereby dub Johto the region of fear-mongering and deterrence. And here's why. This region's strength comes mainly from surveillance, in my personal opinion. So let's start off with a home base in the heart of Johto. In the labs of Goldenrod City, I am placing a very concentrated group of Slowking. Being bitten by Shelder gave it intelligence comparable to that of award-winning scientists. Now, you may recall in my previous video, I compared Dragonite to Albert Einstein, but let's be honest, in reality, he's only comparable to average humans. Award-winning scientists are not average humans, I'm afraid. In my opinion, award-winning scientists are capable of using Pokemon in new and inventive ways to assist the entire generation. Girafarig, for example. The rear head doesn't need to sleep, so it can watch over its surroundings 24 hours a day. Now, a normal person might look at this Pokemon and go, it has no power, it's only Chomp. However, when a refined mind looks at this Pokemon, it thinks, fuck it, ground UAV. These Slowking are going to hook up sensors and antennae to these Girafarig, and they're going to plant them all around the nation. When invading forces come to the borders, they're going to find out immediately and be able to dispatch a response unit. Now, I'll give you credit where it's due. You might be thinking, oh, what about the aerial threats that they might present? Well, the Girafarig aren't going to spot those, obviously. However, these Slowking are very, very smart. They are going to utilize and maybe adapt a different Pokemon to fit this perfectly. Introducing Porygon 2. Created by scientists and with planetary development software installed, it became capable of working in space. Now, I'm taking some liberties with the lore here, obviously. It's clearly stated in the Pokédex that Porygon 2 was created by humans, not Pokemon. However, it is my fundamental belief that if an army of award-winning scientists came and took over Johto, that they would be able to take an already kind of functional Porygon 2 and make it able to operate in space, not just survive. That is something humans could not do, but I'm not gonna lie, a Slowking could probably do that. You can't tell me Pokemon scientists don't know Pokemon better than human scientists, alright? It just works, it works, alright? You gotta go with me on this one. Now, it doesn't matter what these Slowking do, alright? They could run a massive back-end server update and just turn all Porygon 2 into highly functioning sociopaths, Or what they could do is just strap some panels and some thrusters to them and make them orbiting satellites. It doesn't matter. There would be enough Porygon 2 to put into space to not just map out Johto, but map out the entirety of Earth. They could watch out for any threats that is posed by any region on the planet. Or maybe, I don't know, with some highly advanced microphone, they could listen in on all the conversations and know about plans before they're even executed. But that is stretching it a bit far, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe scrap the microphone bit, who knows. Regardless, this is an extremely valuable resource that Johto can use and abuse to their advantage. But now, how are we going to send signals to all of these Porygon in space? It would take a long time to communicate between them both. If it wasn't for Ampharos. Ampharos gives off so much light that it can be seen even from space. I swear, this shit just writes itself sometimes. Can you teach a Porygon Morse code? I don't really know, but I'm sure given enough time, it's more than possible. Or just, you know, shove a CD in him and teach it him that way. I mean, it's a literal machine. Light is very, very fast, and it is also a constant. To be exact, it travels 299,792,458 meters a second. That is fast. It takes light around 1.3 seconds to travel from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the moon. Now, the satellites aren't even halfway to the moon. They're very, very close to the Earth. So it doesn't really matter. It's going to be instantaneous for our given purpose. This is a milestone for this entire global battle, by the way. As you can recall, we're not using legendaries and mythicals, and I don't think I know of any other Pokemon that is able to operate in space. This makes Johto the one and only ruler of space in the entirety of the Pokemon universe. This is giving them an extreme upper hand. They can use this to their advantage extremely well. Now we've gone over the surveillance aspects, let's get back to what we were doing in the previous episode and go over some muscle. Every region has its muscle, you know, the big absolute beasts who are just basically the ground fodder that just do all the fighting, or the men of the population. We'll start off with Totodile, a starter of the region, or more specifically, its final evolution, a literal bipedal alligator. Metal Gear wishes it was this sick. When it bites with its massive and powerful jaws, it shakes its head and savagely tears up its victim, as if that's an actual dex entry, by the way. I thought this was a kid's game. This Pokemon is quite literally an alligator. I mean, it's literally in the name. This led me to do some research into how alligators normally hunt their prey in the wild, and I was led to a very specific move they do called the death roll. And it's just about as scary as you're imagining, I'm not gonna lie. After clamping down with a bite force of 2,125 psi, it literally rolls around like a Gmod ragdoll and just tries to tear its victim limb from limb. So the Pokedex entry kind of makes sense now, but it's still a kid's game. What are you doing, Pokemon? Now, 2,125 psi is the average bite force of the American alligator, which is the highest average bite force of any animal in the entirety of the animal kingdom on the planet. However, the highest recorded live bite force was achieved by a saltwater crocodile at 3,700 psi, but that's estimated to go up to 5,000 psi. Luckily, that's never actually been recorded, or I might have just shit my pants on the spot. Now, what I found particularly interesting about Feraligatr is that it only weighs around 88 kilograms, which, yeah, that's kinda heavy, but average alligators weigh like 900 kilograms. They use this weight to their advantage when they're death rolling around because they're trying to actually rip your limbs off. Feraligatr, even though 88 kg is quite heavy, it's gonna find it a lot harder than a normal alligator to actually deal as much damage. I think this might be the only time in recorded history that a fictional beast of a Pokemon is actually less scary than a normal alligator. And yes, okay, that means I would rather go up against an angry Feraligatr than I would against an angry saltwater crocodile, alright? Sue me, I don't care, I'm gonna be dead anyway. However, that being said, this is real life, so they're going to be coexisting together, and I hate to break it to you, but I think alligators take this one. So far, it's not looking great for Johto and their muscle, but that changes pace very, very shortly. Their water defense might not be up to par, but their ground defense is absolutely terrifying. Steelix. This thing is a Giga Chad. The evolution of Onix weighs in at a solid 400 kg and stands at a whopping 9.2 meters tall. It may just look like another rock snake, but not even Diamond can leave so much as a scratch. It's said that after 100 years of just chilling under the ground, its body is compressed to be harder than diamond, making it immune to good old Rhydon's horn from Kanto. You like that little throwback? You like that throwback? I like the throwback. It also dwells a solid 6/10 of a mile under the Earth's surface, which is just about a kilometer, where its favourite pastime is just chewing up boulders and ingesting them. What a psychopath. To crush just a cubic meter of stone, you need to apply a crushing force of 16,700 tons. That's about the weight of 340 semi-trucks, or if you really want to go into the specifics, that is about 25,000 PSI. That is enough PSI to eat the 340 semi-trucks, which I'm sure Steelix would be more than happy to do. So if he didn't swallow you whole, Steelix could, I don't know, crush every single bone in your body. Let's say though, you don't want to die. Bold assumption, I know. You would rather suffer eternally. Well, have I got news for you. Houndoom. The flames it breathes when it's angry contain toxins. If they cause a burn, they will hurt forever. There is no real life alternative to this, by the way. He is quite literally a magical dog. He is capable of achieving a pain we cannot replicate in the real world. This might be why, in the games, people imagined its eerie howls to be the call of the Grim Reaper. It literally represents death. Let's try and put this into perspective though. Have you ever had an oil burn? If not, don't get one. It involves the epidermis and parts of the dermis layer of the skin, i.e. the first layer of skin and also some of the underlying layers of skin. It leaves it blistered, swollen, and unimaginably painful as the oil clings to your skin and literally melts it. Now, imagine that, but it never ends. So, would you rather the sweet release of death or the Cruciatus Curse? Take your pick, I'll wait. How about some Pokemon that Johto could weaponize and direct instead of letting them just run free? Donphan, for example. It attacks by curling up, then rolling into its foe. It can blow apart a house in one hit. It is quite literally Cannonball from Ben 10. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if you could just take them out with guns and explosives. However, Donphan is covered in tough hide, so even being hit by a car won't phase this Pokemon. Never mind do damage, he won't even give a shit that he's just been hit by a car. What are you gonna do? Run him over? Good luck with that one. Now, you could try taking it out with a water Pokemon. Good thinking, I like it. He's a ground type, he's weak to water Pokemon. However, no, Magcargo comes into play. Magcargo's body temperature is approximately 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Water's vaporized on contact. I think that's the biggest underestimation of 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit that I have ever seen. 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit is hot. That is about 10,000 degrees Celsius for all the normal people in the audience. 10,000 degrees Celsius is getting scarily close to the gas temperature of lightning, or, if you want another example, 2 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Immediate exposure to this temperature would not just vaporize water, it would probably vaporize your clothes and you. If you spent even fractions of a second in any general vicinity of this Pokemon, you may as well have just dropped a nuclear bomb on your foot. It is that deadly. This is probably the closest thing we're going to get to genuine nuclear warfare on the entire planet. So I think it's best for all parties if we just lock this thing away at the center of the earth and pretend it doesn't exist. Or we could shove it in a box and transfer all of its thermal energy into electrical energy to power the entire planet. That is sure to cause world peace, which would probably end the war. So also, yeah, let's just lock it away at the center of the earth. I want to see blood and violence. Now, there's one more Pokemon I want to bring up in this muscle category, whose sole existence is the reason I put deterrence as one of the main strengths of this region. But before we go into that, I want to go into another class of defensive Pokemon that make this region stand out even more. Support Pokemon. These are the Pokemon that protect this region from any sort of unorthodox attacks they might have that threaten their self-sufficiency, like their food sources or their water sources, for example. Miltank is a fantastic example of this. Its milk is packed with nutrition, making it the ultimate beverage for the sick and wary. You might know as this is purchasable all over the globe as a health thing. It's like 50 HP or something like that. It's fantastic, I'm not going to lie, especially early game. Let's say theoretically Kanto managed to take out the entirety of the agriculture of Johto. They could still survive solely off just drinking moo milk, which I'm not going to lie, isn't ideal, but these are hard times, okay? Let it slide. Another slightly weirder example of this is Espeon. Espeon is extremely loyal to any trainer it considers to be worthy. It is said that this Pokemon developed its precognitive powers to protect its trainer from harm. By reading air currents, it can predict things such as the weather or its foe's next move. So, theoretically speaking, we don't even need the Porygon satellites to find out what the other regions are doing. We can just use Espeon's air reading abilities. Let's say its trainer isn't any form of threat from, oh, I don't know, being bombed in World War III. Espeon can just use its telepathic abilities to be able to completely negate all of it. Theoretically speaking, of course. I don't know how accurate these air currents are, but I'm not a weatherman, so you know. Do I know how it does it? No. I'm presuming it's magic. Anyway, you've probably guessed by now that I am referring to the pseudo-legendary of this region, Tyranitar. This thing is seriously scary. Its body can't be harmed by any sort of attack, so it's very eager to make challenges against enemies. Honestly, I was debating just leaving it at that. It literally cannot be harmed. You cannot win against it. Tyranitar is so overwhelmingly powerful that it can bring down a whole mountain to make its nest. It has the power to make the ground shake and mountains crumble. Now, I don't know what magnitude earthquake something has to produce to crumble a mountain, but it must be pretty big. The severity of an earthquake is based off of two things mostly: how big the fault was and also how close the fault was to the surface. A real life example is the earthquake that hit central Italy in 2016, which was a magnitude of 6.6 and still managed to shatter part of a mountain. As far as my researchers took me, this is the only instance of a shattered mountain that I could find in real life. But I'm sure there should probably more somewhere, I just haven't found them. Not to mention, however, this earthquake also removed towns from the map. When you think about it, it's genuinely just sad. It's sad and scary, and I don't like it. Now, all earthquakes' original faults, just like this one, happened under the ground. We are talking about a being that can start earthquakes on the surface of the planet. This means the intensity of the actual fault doesn't have to be that large for it to cause catastrophic damage, as the distance required to travel is practically non-existent. Regardless of how it does it though, this is a being that can summon earthquakes and crumble mountains. Let's just say you get 10 of these in the same area together, and they all start fighting with each other because they think they're hard. Their collective earthquake could probably shake the entire planet. And if they can't do that, don't worry, I'm sure we could breed up a theoretically infinite amount of Tyranitar that could complete the job. This is what I mean by an international deterrent. It's basically holding a nuke. Johto's international firepower pales in comparison to Kanto's, in my personal opinion. But to be honest, I think Kanto would be too scared to engage with Johto, when if they did, they could just split the entire planet in two. Is it really worth the hassle? Why not just focus your offensive capabilities on a different region, alright? Just leave them be. Their defensive capabilities completely outweigh their offensive capabilities, but you know what? That is completely fine. So far in this war, if I was to be anywhere when it all kicked off, I would want to be in Newbark Town, with my feet up, sipping a glass of moo milk, knowing that I'm just gonna be fine and sit out the entire war. Now, might that change as we explore all the other regions on the planet? Probably, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to stick around to find out the answer to that, I'm afraid. So, see you soon. Also, subscribe now!